Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
No, glad to be here.
I wanted to start off talking about some of the radical changes we've seen in the last few days at VA. In the month you've been here, we've seen some contract cuts, we've seen some staffing cuts. There's now a report out that up to 80,000 staffers could be cut in coming months. Is VA in a very different place, in a very better place than it was just a couple weeks ago?
I think we are. What we're looking at right now is generational change. It's not generational change just at the VA, it's across government. President Trump, when he came in, he ran on this. This was not a secret to anyone about size of government, scope of government, and how we actually, at the end of the day, do what we do. And I think that's the part that I think is here that I want people to understand as we move forward here at the VA. You know, you call it radicalization. I call it normalization. Why is it okay in, looking at contracts, and we've only, like I said, touched 2% of our contracts, but yet in 2% of the contracts, we found, over $900 million in this kind of thing that we're moving back into this complex that were either duplicative or non-mission essential. That shouldn't be radical. That should be normal. We should be looking at this all the time. Personnel issues, we're looking at it from a perspective of the last few years. We've grown rapidly here at the VA. But yet on the same time, we've also had our backlog on benefits cases, and also some of our wait times and other issues go up at our hospitals. Well, if money and people were always the solution, then this would have been solved years ago. And so we're looking at it from a perspective of how do we make the greatest employees in the world, which I think our VA employees are, better, more efficient to do one thing. The government is not about employing people, it's about serving people. And that's what we're doing here.
You mentioned the organizational change here. Yes. There's a leaked memo out. There's a report out now that there could be up to 80,000 cuts and a really fundamental reorganization coming in the next few months. Is that the plan here? Are we looking at cuts of that size and a real complete rethinking of how VA is organized in terms of its workforce?
Well, we are looking at it from a top-down perspective. And also, we're responding to what the administration has stated, that we're going to do a total-wide government reduction in force. We're looking at that, and VA, of course, has a large footprint to go there. So if you look at the numbers in which we're looking at now, that was back to 2019, 2020 levels of staffing. The question is going to come is if the answer was money and people, then we should have solved our problems a long time ago. The problem is not really at this point. It's the question is, are we utilizing that function the best way we possibly can? You've been covering it here for a long time, and I thought we talked about that, both of us a little bit long in the tooth on the hill here. But the question is, it's not sometimes are we just putting money. There's a game being played here many times, Leo, and it's been here for years. And it's called, let's give money and stuff to the VA, and then let's beat up on the VA when they're not doing what they think they're supposed to be doing. That's just going to stop here. We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to work together with the funds and resources that we have to make a better, quote, product with some of the best employees around who want to take care of veterans. I'm putting the veteran back first. So for me, it's about looking at this and making some big changes. And that, yes, that is concerning. It's concerning for me, and there's nothing, for people who do get laid off and already have. That's something I take very personally, especially as secretary. But the question at the end of the day is, what is our purpose and what is our mission? Our mission and purpose is the VA is the veteran, and we're going to do that the best way we possibly can.
You've been meeting with some of the veteran service organizations. Yes. They've expressed a lot of concerns about the cuts that they've seen so far, especially with the first round, these like 2,400 or so folks who were probationary employees. Felt like very sudden cuts, felt like the kind of things that, again, we're less than a month into you being sworn in here. A lot of things happening in those first few weeks, but a lot of concerns that maybe those weren't properly thought out. Maybe those aren't, that they don't see the plan of the whole reorganization there. So as more cuts come down the line, are you going to be spending more time explaining who those are, maybe trying to soften some of the blow of that? Or should we expect, Friday announcements that another 5,000, 6,000 folks are gone?
Well, I think the one thing that we got to look at is let's reframe the question in the sense of how we're looking at this. And I've talked to the VSOs, and many of them, after I've explained sort of the question to them, and I've looked at it, had said, okay, we still are concerned and we want to have, but yet we understand. And I think one of the things here is this mistaken identity. The game on the Hill, especially with Congress, is, and especially if you're in the opposition or you don't like what's going on, is you put out innuendo, you put out rumor, you put out, well, I hear that if he does this, we're losing health care. What's been interesting is every time we've asked a reporter or anybody who's asked us, well, ask the senator or ask the congressman where this is, it's been crickets. They don't come back with specifics. They just simply come back with, well, it may. Well, I may run a marathon tomorrow, but probably not. I think the issue here is what they're sending out is fear into our community. And I'm not going to tolerate that kind of a fear in our workforce and also our veterans, because it keeps veterans from coming and getting the services they need. What we're going to do here, though, is let's go back and you say, if there's a thought of a randomness here, we blocked out over 300,000 positions from the hiring freeze, from the early retirement, from the probationary cuts, also from the hiring freeze, so that they could actually be in and we can continue to staff the places that we need are mission critical, forward facing with our veterans. So when you take that kind of approach and then you look at it from the different perspectives, and you have an exemption process for anybody that feels like they are wrongfully terminated or wrongfully caught up in that probationary status, they had a way to rise up and say, we need the exemption, which we've answered many of those exemptions. So I'm not accepting the fact that it was arbitrary and random. Look, layoffs are tough, I don't care where you are, and they hurt. But also government, as in private enterprise, have these issues when they come up, and we're seeing industries laying off a lot of people at a time, 15% of the workforce at Southwest Airlines and others. When you look at what we're cutting and we're looking at how we're doing it, the issue is, are we putting it toward what goes to our veterans in the beginning? And it's not random and it's not arbitrary. It's as best we can looking at the situation as we currently see it. So going forward, I'm going to have VA career employees, we're going to have senior management here, leadership including, as it gets to my level, looking at our functions, looking at our organization and saying, where do we see that either cuts can be made or changes can be made that get us back to our mission?
Well, I think that's part of the question right now is that already going on? You've already announced 2,400 cuts, 2,400 positions eliminated. Is that coming from VA leadership saying these are extraneous positions, or is that coming from across the street, the Department of Government Efficiency, telling you just find anyone and get rid of that? I think there's an impression out there that this is not really VA looking at its operations and saying these are smart cuts. This is just reaching a number that someone across the street has come up with.
Yeah, Leo, that's the line that we hear on this Hill all the time. If I don't like something, we're going to blame something that we can demonize, and we're going to demonize DOJ, we're going to demonize across the street and saying it's not happening. Last time I checked, I was the one that raised my hand and swore in to be the Secretary of the VA. And this is what is happening when we look at this and we have efficiencies and ask from the administration. The president has said, we're going to look for government efficiencies. We're going to look for these things, and we want you to move ahead and look at this across the government. It's not just VA. We've seen it in every department going forward. We're doing it, I think, in one of the most progressive ways by actually saying who we protected, who we made available not to be a part. I read a story one time just a couple of weeks ago that somebody said, well, I wanted to take early retirement, and I found out I was in one of those exempted positions. I couldn't retire. Oh, well, I'll go back to work. So again, my concern here is the innuendo and rumor coming from the Hill from a political perspective. And I just want anyone to say, we're looking at this in the best way we can, coming through this office, coming through my office, coming through this department to look at ourselves, not others. The president himself has made the declaration that we're going to make government more efficient. We're going to make it more streamlined, and it's going to see in a different way less probably workers as we go through. So let's just put it in proper perspective. It comes from the president's directive. The secretary is carrying this out in all of our departments.